And from where it's paused at this point in the video, who, if anyone else, do you recognize sort of coming into frame or coming to join your group?
Karen Reed.
And so from this, is this about the time that she entered the establishment or came into the bar?
Yes.
Hi everybody and welcome to Fair and Square. Today we're covering the testimony of Michael Camerand, a close friend of John O'Keefe's and was at one of the bars that evening. The testimony also includes quite a lot of bar footage, camera footage from that evening too. Now, as always, let's keep the comments respectful and as empathetic as possible. Thank you so much. That means a lot to us. Now, without further ado, as always, let's kick straight into gear.
Mr. Camerand, with regard to your statement in the text as far as leaving now, where were you leaving and where were you going to?
Leaving my house, going to John's house.
And who, if anyone, was going with you at that time?
My daughter.
And if you know, approximately what time did you arrive at Mr. O'Keefe's house?
I don't.
Now, through your friendship with Mr. O'Keefe, did you become familiar with a person named Karen Reed?
Yes.
And how did you become familiar with her, and who, if anyone, was she to Mr. O'Keefe as far as you?
John introduced me to her. She was John's girlfriend.
And just to be clear, do you see Miss Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's sitting right there.
No, just has the record reflect identification and identify the witness.
Yes.
Now, with regard to Miss Reed, prior to that date of January 28, 2022, how long had you known Miss Reed?
A year?
Do you recall approximately when you met her?
No.
And as far as you were aware, where Mr. O'Keefe lived, did Miss Reed live there as well?
Yes, not full time.
So she had a house of her own as far as you knew?
Correct.
And about how often on a given week would you see Mr. O'Keefe?
Couple times.
And about how often would you see Miss Reed?
I would see her also.
Now, as far as your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe and or Miss Reed, would there be occasions where you would see Mr. O'Keefe without Miss Reed?
Correct, yes.
Would there be any occasion where you would see Miss Reed without Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And where would that be?
At the house, maybe at Fields.
Now, with reference to their relationship, what, if any, conversation did you have with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to his relationship with Miss Reed?
Objection. Sustain. We need a time frame.
In the time period around, say, the weeks leading up to January 28, 2022, what, if any, conversation do you recall having with Mr. O'Keefe in regard to his relationship with Ms. Reed?
Just regular guy conversations.
Anything specific that you can recall?
No.
Now, when you arrived at the house, or typically when you would come over to Mr. O'Keefe's house, where is it that you would park?
In the driveway to the right.
And is that what you did on this particular day?
Yes.
When you arrived at the house, where did you go?
Into the house.
Yourself and your daughter?
Yes.
And when you got in there, who, if anyone, was at the house at that time?
Kaylee and John.
And what is it that you did, or what is it that occurred while you were in the house?
Excuse me?
What happened in the house?
We were just congratulating the girls, talking about how good it's going to be, different school, and just really excited for the girls.
And at some point, did yourself and Mr. O'Keefe make plans to leave the house?
Yes.
And where did you go?
We went down to McCarthy's.
And is that CF McCarthy's?
Correct.
Is that an establishment? Where is that?
It's in Canton Center.
And about how far away from Mr. O'Keefe's house is that?
5-10 minutes.
And is that somewhere that you're familiar with? You've been before?
Not frequently, no.
Now, with regard to, you know approximately what time you left Mr. O'Keefe's house and went to CF McCarthy's?
I don't.
And where were the girls when the two of you went to CF McCarthy's?
They were in the house.
And at the time that you left there and went to CF McCarthy's, who, if anyone else, was there any plans as far as meeting anybody else there?
I'm supposed to meet Karen.
Now, prior to leaving the house, what, if anything, did you or Mr. O'Keefe do with reference to the vehicles that were in the driveway?
So when we were leaving the house, I was parked in the driveway. John was parked on the left side of the driveway. John asked me to, I backed up so John could move his car out of the way so Karen could pull her car into the garage because of the snowstorm.
I'm sorry, you said because of the what now?
Snowstorm?
And as far as the snowstorm was concerned, what, if anything, did you know at that point in regard to that?
We were supposed to get a lot of snow.
I may have just one moment, Ron.
Yes.
I'm just trying to remember which is which. With the court's permission, I would ask that Ms. Gilman be allowed to publish a part of Exhibit 6, which is the driveway of the ring video.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask for video number 145. I'm sorry, if you could pause it right there. Mr. Camerand, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes,
And what do you recognize that to be?
myself and my daughter.
And as far as, may I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes.
So just before you hear, this is a laser pointer. If you just press that button.
Okay. Okay.
And Mr. Camerand, using that laser pointer that you now have with you, if you could direct the jury's attention to where in this video you observe yourself and your daughter. And there are two vehicles in this sort of frame, is that correct?
Yes.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, just describe to the jury whose car is who and where it is.
The white car is mine. The SUV is John's.
Now, as far as the ring system that Mr. O'Keefe had at his house at this time, as far as your knowledge of it, what, if anything, would the two of you do with reference to sort of picking up or dropping off kids in the ring video?
Yes, he had a camera, so like I'd always wave or give him, I always knew that he was like watching.
And do you know how he was watching if he wasn't home?
Yes, on his phone.
So would that be sort of a running joke between the two of you?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Gilman, if you could play this. gentlemen, if you could just pause it there briefly. Now, Mr. Camerand, are you familiar with Mr. O'Keefe's house? You've been there plenty of times, correct?
Yes.
And with reference to sort of where you and your daughter sort of exited from the screen, what, if any, sort of entrances to the home are located in that area?
2 garage doors.
And are you familiar with that garage area?
Yes.
Is that typically how you would enter the house?
Yes.
And with regard to sort of the condition of the garage, was Mr. O'Keefe particular about that?
Yes. He was.
And how so?
He always kept things very tight. He was like OCD.
And so as far as how many garage doors, as far as, and what I mean by garage doors is sort of electronic up, up
So
and
there's
down.
2 garage doors that go up and down, and there's a door. Just a single entry door.
On the left, as far as the left door.
There was an old classic car he had, convertible.
And then as far as the right door,
It was empty.
and once beyond those sort of bay doors that go up and down, what if any other entrance way into the garage was?
There's a side door.
And if you recall, when you were entering at that time on 28th with your daughter, how did you enter it?
We went to the garage door, electric door.
And was that something, what if anything was affixed to those garage doors as far as security was concerned? Beyond that?
A keypad. We'd have to punch in a key.
And at the time or at any time, were you familiar with what that passcode was?
Yes.
Now, when you walk into the garage, how is it that you get from the garage to the house?
You walk into the garage and you walk up 3 steps and you go into a door.
And then once you sort of walk up the 3 steps and go into the door, what part of the house are you in when you enter?
You're pretty much in the kitchen.
And you mentioned that Mr. O'Keefe was meticulous, if not OCD, when it came to the garage. How did that relate to how he kept the house?
The same. Everything was very tidy. When you walked in the door into the house, to the left, you put your shoes, your coats would be hung there.
And as far as shoes were concerned, is that something that you wore inside the house? Or not?
He'd rather you not.
And that was pretty well known to people that had been there before, correct?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Gilman, from the same exhibit, if I could, actually, I'm sorry. Your Honor, with regard to the next video that's not contained on this Exhibit 5 from the same video, I would offer that at this time as the next exhibit.
And there was no objection, Mr. Jackson?
No objection.
Okay.
Exhibit 49.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, for the record, this would relate to Exhibit 6, and it's video number 148. And with the court's permission, may I publish that to the jury at this time, Your Honor?
Yes.
What was just up on the video, sir, it's just up on the screen as video number 148. That was what you had testified to previously as far as moving the cars.
Correct.
And why was that again?
So Karen could pull in the driveway, in the garage, excuse me.
So the expectation, from your understanding, is that Ms. Reed was coming back to the house at Meadows later on that evening.
Correct.
Now, as Mr. O'Keefe, from that video on the screen there, was walking to the car. Did you happen to notice how he was dressed?
Yes.
And as far as what you observed in that video, what you recall from that evening, is that how he was dressed that evening?
Yes.
And when I say how he was dressed, for sort of the entirety of the time that you were with him?
Yes.
So it's January 28th. You recall, you indicated there was a snowstorm coming. It was cold out, is that correct?
Correct.
And with reference to that, was Mr. O'Keefe someone that would typically wear a coat?
No.
And ever? That you can recall?
Never that I could recall.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, with reference to that same Exhibit 6, if I could publish video number 149.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, for the sake of time, you can start. And yes, you can break it down. So from that video, Mr. Camerand, what is it that you and Mr. O'Keefe are doing in that video?
Heading down to McCarthy's.
Now,
Do you want the lights on, Mr. Lally?
yes.
Thank you.
Now, at some point after you arrive at C.F. McCarthy's, who, if anyone else, sort of joins your group?
Kurt.
And that'd be Kurt Roberts, is that
Correct.
And how was it that he came to C.F. McCarthy's that night, if you know?
I texted him.
And in general terms, what do you call sort of what that text communication was like between yourself and Mr. Roberts?
Yes, he said he was busy. He was doing something that I texted him that he was a pussy.
And following that text, did Mr. Roberts eventually arrive at C.F. McCarthy's?
He showed up, yes.
And about how long after you and Mr. O'Keefe arrived did Kurt show up?
I would like to say maybe an hour.
And if you know, when was it that at some point you indicated Ms. Reed appeared at C.F. McCarthy's as well?
Correct.
And do you know about how long after yourself and John arrived that Ms. Reed?
I don't. Exact.
Now, with reference to that establishment of C.F. McCarthy's, are you aware, or have you become aware that there was surveillance video from inside the bar that night?
Yes.
You've seen some of that footage, is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Commonwealth seeks to introduce and admit the surveillance video from C.F. McCarthy's as the next exhibit.
And there's no objection, Mr. Jackson?
There's none.
Is it 55?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Court reporter.
Tori. 55 or 50?
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would seek to publish portions of that video for the jury at this time.
Okay.
If I could ask you to play from about 7 minutes and 40 seconds, and we'll go through about 9 minutes or so. If you could pause it just there. Now, do you recognize what's up on the screen, Mr. Camerand?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
C.F. McCarthy's.
And yourself and Mr. O'Keefe are not in frame at this time, is that correct?
No.
If you could, using the laser pointer before you, if you could direct the jury's attention to where it was about in reference to the bar that you and Mr. O'Keefe eventually came to congregate that.
These seats here?
And from this video, from your time there that night or prior occasions, can you see sort of where the front door is to the establishment?
Yes.
Could you direct the jury's attention to where that is? And so what I'm going to ask in just a moment is for Ms. Gilman to press play, and then what I'd ask you to do is if you could just direct the jury's attention to when, if at all, you observe yourself or Mr. O'Keefe walking.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could. And Ms. Camerand, if you could pause it right there. And just, I'm sorry, Mr. Camerand, you're directing with the laser pointer to the screen. If you could just describe what you're directing.
That is me, and that is John.
And thank you, sir.
Well,
Ms. Gilman, if you could just, again, play this through the 9 minutes. And Your Honor, for the record, I think we're at about 9 minutes and 41 seconds or so.
Okay.
So with reference to Steve McCarthy's, you went there, had some drinks, correct?
yes.
Do you recall what you were drinking or what John was drinking that night?
Beer?
Is that sort of typical for the two of you?
Yes.
And do you recall sort of, was that from the tap, a bottle, or something else?
From the bottle?
And do you recall what type of beer typically you would drink or Mr. O'Keefe would drink?
Bud Light?
And do you recall specifically that's what you had that night, or that's just what you would typically have?
Typically, I think we had Bud Light.
And if you know approximately how many beers or how many drinks did you have over the course of your time at C.F. McCarthy's that night?
I don't.
As far as yourself versus Mr. O'Keefe, do you recall sort of in relation to each other how much you each had to drink?
Not maybe 6 beers?
And what I'm asking, sir, is it's not like, did one of you have 10 and one of you had 2, or was it sort of commensurate with each other?
Commensurate, one for one.
Okay. So essentially you're buying rounds as you go along.
Correct.
Now, from your time at C.F. McCarthy's, how would you describe sort of the tone or sort of the demeanor within the group that you were in that night?
Pretty good.
So no arguments, no fighting, anything like that? You recall?
No.
And just briefly going back to the clothing that you observed Mr. O'Keefe wearing in this and that you recall him wearing that night, what, if any, damage or tears or anything like that did you note in any of his clothing that night?
I did not see any.
Now, Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to take this down and go to the third video. And Ms. Gilman, if I could direct your attention to the 6-minute and 10-second mark through the 7-minute mark. And when you get to 6:10, if you could just pause. Now, Ms. Camerand, I'm directing your attention to the screen, if you could, from the parties that were, within your group sort of that night at the bar. If you could just direct the jury's attention to who is who or who, if anyone, you recognize in the video.
Kurt?
So in addition to yourself and Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. Roberts has now joined your group.
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just play it for me. If you could pause that, please. Now, with reference to Mr. Roberts, was he a beer drinker as well?
Yes.
And from a bottle that night, same sort of thing that yourself and Mr. O'Keefe were having?
Correct.
And from where it's paused at this point in the video, who, if anyone else, do you recognize sort of coming into frame or coming to join your group?
Karen Reed?
And so from this, is this about the time that she entered the establishment or came into the bar?
Yes.
Now, with reference to Ms. Reed, what, if anything, do you recall her drinking during your time that you were both at C.F. McCarthy's that night?
She was drinking out of a glass.
And if you know, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the color of what was in the glass?
It was clear.
And beyond sort of the clear liquid in the glass, what, if anything else, did you observe in the glass as far as a straw, fruit, anything like that?
A straw, maybe.
And what, if anything, did you know what was in the glass?
I didn't.
And as far as you could tell, what was in the glass?
Vodka?
Is that something that Ms. Reed would typically drink if you had been out with her on prior occasions?
Yes.
Now, I'm sorry to keep jumping back and forth between, but Ms. Gilman, if you could just hit play again and let it run, to the 7-minute mark. Thank you. Now, Ms. Gilman, from this same third video in this exhibit of the C.F. McCarthy's, if I could ask you to forward to the 14-minute mark, pause that. And if you could, I would ask that you play this from the 14-minute mark until about 14 minutes and 15 seconds, just about 15 seconds. And Ms. Gilman, you can take that down for now. Mr. Camerand, you indicated that your son was at Bruce Elementary School for a play of some sort, is that correct?
He was for a little bit.
And from there, where, if anywhere else, did he go that evening?
He went to a friend's house to skate in his backyard.
Skate as far as just skating, or what, if anything else was?
He was skating at a little party.
Well, let me ask you this. Was he a hockey player?
Yes, he's a hockey player.
Okay, so when you say skating, in the
Skating,
backyard.
yes. Makeshift hockey rink in somebody's backyard.
And At some point, with relation to that, what, if anything, sort of caused you to leave C.F. McCarthy's on that night?
I received a phone call that my son was hit in the face with a hockey stick and he lost his tooth.
And so upon receiving that call, where did you go?
I went to go get him.
And do you recall about what time that was that you left C.F. McCarthy's to go get him?
I don't recall.
Now, from the group that you were with, as far as yourself, Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Reed, and Mr. Roberts, who, if anyone, left first?
I believe Kurt.
And do you recall sort of how it was that Kurt left?
Kurt just got up and left.
So sort of an Irish goodbye?
Yeah, Irish goodbye, yes.
That's something he's known for?
Yes.
And about when was that in relation to when you left?
Not too soon after.
I'm sorry, not too soon after or not too soon before?
I left after probably, I'd like to say 15 minutes after Kurt left.
Now, with the court's permission, Your Honor, I'd just like to publish just 2 more segments from this.
Okay.
So Ms. Gilman, if I could direct your attention to the 4th video. And if I could ask you to forward it to about 19 minutes and 40 seconds. Okay, good play. Ms. Camerand, if I could ask you to just pause it there for 1 second. Now, Ms. Camerand, from your looking at this surveillance video here, or from your memory of that night, you see Mr. O'Keefe speaking to another gentleman, is that correct?
Yes.
You know who that person is?
Yes.
And who is that person?
Sully?
And do you know his first name or anything beyond just Sully?
Sully, I don't know his first name.
And how is it that you know him?
Kids play baseball with his son.
So in addition to your son playing baseball with Mr. O'Keefe's nephew, Mr. Roberts, was he ever son that around the same age?
Correct.
And this individual, Sully, he has a child that plays baseball with the 3 of your kids?
Correct.
Is that someone that you had contacted to meet there, or he just happened to be there?
He just happened to be there.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just hit play again and just run to about the 20-minute mark or so. Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could move that forward again to 24 minutes and 10 seconds. And if you could just let this run until about 24 minutes and 20 seconds, so just about 10 seconds or so. And so, Mr. Camerand, did you see yourself in that portion of the video?
Yes.
And you know what you were doing at that time?
Leaving.
And so prior to leaving, had you sort of settled up a tab or something?
Yes, I picked up the tab.
And then you left and went to get your son, correct?
Correct.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down, please. Now, Mr. Camerand, you left there and went to pick up your son, is that correct?
Yes.
And following picking up your son, where did you go from there?
Back to John's house.
And why did you go back to John's house at that time?
My daughter was there picking her up.
You went to pick up your daughter?
Correct.
And you recall approximately what time that was?
11.
And when you came back to the residence at One Meadows, did you park in the driveway again?
Correct.
And did you physically sort of go in the house to pick up?
No, I did. No, I did not.
Now, as far as from the time that from the time that you left with Mr. O'Keefe to go to see McCarthy's versus the time that you came back, anything changed as far as position of Mr. O'Keefe's car?
No.
What, if anything, did you note as far as the garage doors were concerned, or any damage or anything like that?
Everything looked normal.
And, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would seek to just publish another video or two from Exhibit 6.
Okay.
Questions? And at this time, Ms. Gilman, if I could have from the driveway again, video 152. Ms. Gilman, you can stop still. Now, from that video 152 that was just up on screen, sir, can you describe for the jury, just as sort of what was going on in that video?
I was picking up my daughter, Madeline, and my son, Michael, was with me. Yes, all three of us.
And where did you go from there?
Home.
And when you got home, well, let me ask you this first. During the time that you were at C.F. McCarthy's, you obviously, at some point, you didn't do an Irish goodbye?
No.
So at some point, you indicated to Mr. O'Keefe and or Miss Reed that you were leaving to go pick up your son?
Yes.
And what, if any, indication did they give to you as far as where they were going, or what were their intentions for the rest of the evening?
They were heading either across the street or to the hillside.
And when you say across the street, what, if anything, was across the street?
There's another bar room.
That's the waterfall?
Waterfall, yes.
You familiar with that establishment as well?
Yes.
And where is that in relation to C.F. McCarthy?
Across the street to the left, if you were coming out of C.F. McCarthy's.
Walking distance, is that correct?
Correct.
And you leave, you get your son, you pick up your daughter at Mr. O'Keefe's house, and then you go home, correct?
Correct.
And when you get home, about how much longer were you up before you went to bed?
Wasn't up much longer.
And when you typically go to bed, what, if anything, do you do with your phone?
Put them on the charger.
Where's the charger located in reference?
In the kitchen.
And when, following to the next day, about what time is it that you wake up on the 29th?
5:36 a.m.
And what was it that woke you up, if you know?
Phones ringing.
And how many phones do you have?
2.
And essentially one personal, one work, is that correct?
Correct.
Were both phones ringing or one or the other?
One phone at that time.
Was that your work or your personal?
My personal phone.
And get up, you hear that, you look at your phone, what, if anything, do you see on the screen?
I see a lot of missed calls, a bunch of missed calls from Karen, and missed calls from my wife's work.
And when you say missed calls, are we talking about one call, several calls?
Several calls.
Any voicemails that you recall associated with those calls?
I don't recall.
And so based on sort of making that observation of the missed calls, what do you do with that?
I pick up the phone and call my wife.
And what, if anything, did you learn from your wife at that time?
My wife said to me that John.
Okay, sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Okay.
So, Mr. Camerand, you call your wife, and what, if anything, is it in general that she tells you?
She tells me that John didn't come home last night.
And she's still at work at this point, is that correct?
Correct.
Did she indicate to you how she came to find that out?
She said she's received phone calls from
From whom?
Karen.
From Karen. And then based on that, you have a conversation with your wife about John's niece and nephew, is that right?
Yes, my wife says to me, go get Kaylee. Kaylee is home.
So at that time, your wife tells you that Kaylee is home in Meadows Ave by herself.
Yes.
And so based on that information, what is it that you do next?
I realize that Kaylee's home alone, so I throw some clothes on, go out to the car, clean the car off real quick, and get in the car and go.
When you say clean the car off real quick, what, if anything, did you have to clean off?
I cleaned the snow off the front windshield.
And again, you sort of drive over to John's house to get Kaylee.
Correct.
And when you get there, you pull in the driveway as well.
Yes.
And when you get to John's house and you pull in the driveway, what, if anything, did you observe about sort of the condition of the garage doors at that point?
When I pulled in, I could tell the garage door was open, left open.
Which one? The one to the right or the one?
To the one to the right.
And you go inside that door?
I do.
And what, if anything, did you do once you went inside?
Once I went inside, I saw Kaylee. I asked Kaylee get whatever she needed and to come and get in the car. While she was doing that, I started clearing some snow. I thought maybe snow hit the sensors, so that the door couldn't go down.
And so you start clearing the snow with a shovel?
With the shovel that was in the garage, yes.
And after you had cleared some of the snow with the shovel, what did you do with regard to the doors at that point?
So I tried to put them down. They wouldn't go down. Then I asked Kaylee, I think, to re-enter the code to see if she could get the doors to go down, but the doors would not go down. The door.
And at some point, how did you get the...
So there's a red rope. I manually pulled that, shut the door, locked the doors. There's 2 side locks on the garage door, and I went out through the side garage door.
Now, when you arrived at the residence and you pulled into the driveway, do you recall how many vehicles were in the driveway when you got there?
Yes.
And how many?
2.
And whose vehicles were they?
John's and Karen's.
And John's vehicle, where was that in relation to the last time that you saw it when you picked up your daughter there?
Same spot.
And as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed's vehicle, where was that in relation to the garage or in relation to the driveway?
It was pulled in on the left side, all the way in.
So in the area of the garage door that you were just speaking
Correct.
about?
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, did you look at the vehicle or touch the vehicle in any way?
No.
Fair to say that your focus was sort of on the garage door and the fact that it was open, correct?
Correct.
And why was that? Maybe self-evident, but why was your focus on
Because I figured John would go crazy when he came home and all the snow was in his garage.
Now, at any point in time when you initially got the call from your wife, did you yourself reach out to John at any point?
I did not.
You know, if I may, I would just seek to publish just a few more videos from Exhibit 6, the driveway ring.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have from those, first starting with video 155, and essentially it's going to go 155 through 158. If you could pause it. And Mr. Camerand, you recognize what's up on the screen again?
Yes, my car.
Is this sort of when you're pulling in to get killed?
Correct.
Using the laser pointer before you, again, if you could just direct the jury's attention to where you observed Ms. Reed's vehicle. And is that essentially from what you observed there, that's where it was the entirety of the time that you were there?
Yes.
So nobody else came to the home during the time that you were there to pick up Kaylee and shoveling out the snow from the garage?
No.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just run. Gilman, if you could play the next video, 156.
Car's locked.
Ms. Gilman, the next video, 157. Last thing, Ms. Gilman, video 158. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. And so, Mr. Camerand, what was just in those last 4 videos that were played before the jury? Is that essentially the process that you were describing as far as yourself and Kaylee trying to get the garage door down?
Correct.
And so you leave from there and go back to your house, is that correct?
Yes.
And where does sort of you and Kaylee go once you get inside?
We go into the house. We're in the kitchen in my house, and my daughter. We get my daughter up.
And your daughter then sort of hangs out with Kaylee for a period of time?
Correct. They go downstairs and they were hanging out.
And at some point in time, how does Kaylee leave your house, or where does she go from there?
I take Kaylee home.
And why is it that you take Kaylee home? About what time is it, if you know?
I don't know what time. Paul had called me.
And by Paul, who do you mean by?
Paul O'Keefe, John's brother.
And he informed you that John had passed?
Yes.
So you took Kaylee to the house on Meadows Ave to be with the family, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.